On 9th May every year, Europe commemorates the founding document of the European Union. Signed in 1950, the declaration was a stepping stone to cooperation in Europe and peace on the continent. In Malawi, the EU is implementing various programs ranging from education, governance, agriculture, and economic development, among others. In this week's edition of Date A, which is a special edition as we commemorate EU Day, I engaged the EU ambassador to Malawi, Rune Skinnebach. My name is Angel Chima, welcoming you to the program. Welcome to the program, Ambassador Skinnebach.
Thanks a lot, Angel. Thanks for seeing me.
And thank you for having us here at the EU residence.
You're most welcome.
First things first, people would like to know who Ambassador Rune Skinnebach is.
So, I'm originally from Denmark. I haven't lived there for the past 30 years or so, but worked in international organizations, mainly with the Red Cross, the International Federation, the ICRC, in Geneva, in New York. And then I've worked for the European Union in different capacities. I started out as a junior expert. Since then I became an official. And I've been posted mainly to Brussels and to the African continent, where I worked in Ghana, in Zambia, and now in Malawi. I've also been posted in Haiti in the meantime.
Right. It's such a pleasure to have you in the country, and you've been a friend of the people, the friend of the media since you've been here. And we will be commemorating EU Day, 9th May. What's this day all about, really?
So, as you mentioned in your introduction, it is a celebration or the commemoration of the Schuman Declaration, the founding declaration for the EU. EU in 1950 was just coming out of the Second World War, and it was in tatters. It was destroyed, and we wanted to recreate Europe. We also wanted to avoid further wars. We had the First World War from 14 to 18, and then the Second World War again from 39 to 45, and we thought it was enough now. We wanted to ensure peace and stability. With the Schuman Declaration, the coal and steel community was created. It was a community which created the steel production and the energy production, two crucial components to, if you want to wage a war, you need energy and you need steel to produce weapons. And therefore, with the Schuman Declaration, creating a supranational entity which controlled the coal and steel production, we were hopeful that we could ensure peace. And so far, it was a successful endeavor. Later, this community was enlarged both vertically and horizontally. And today, we are a European Union with 27 member states gathered around the same values, the values of peace and stability, of unity and solidarity, of democracy and human rights.
Right. You talked about values of peace and stability, democracy, and human rights. In Malawi, I know that the EU has really taken a very strong stance in as far as supporting the elections and monitoring the whole process. How has it been over the years, and how are you preparing for our 2025 elections?
So, if you allow, I'll take a step back, because the EU-Malawi relationship dates back 50 years, or almost, 48 years, in fact, since we opened the first delegation, a European Commission delegation here. And we had a very good relationship, but it was a classical donor-beneficiary relationship. We did development programs. Since then, our relationship has matured. It has become a more equal relationship. It has become a political partnership. And today, Malawi is considered one of our key partners in the region. Certainly, Malawi is standing out as a democratic beacon also, and we are very keen to support its endeavors in this respect, but also that it's staying on track. With regards to the elections themselves, we support them through a basket fund which is managed by the UN, which gives support to the Malawi Electoral Commission, to many of the preparatory aspects of the elections. We also support the Ministry of Local Government with the issuing of IDs, which will be crucial for the registration exercise. And we support a number of civil society organizations for them to do civic education up to the elections. Finally, I hope that we will be invited to send a monitoring mission also, which will monitor the elections to certify to them being fair and transparent and inclusive.
Right. I know that the EU is also very instrumental in supporting developmental projects in the country. Maybe in brief, could you share with us some of those projects?
So, we are the biggest donor to government in Malawi. From 21 to 24, we have allocated some 352 million euros, almost, I'd say, 700 billion kwacha to the Malawi government. We work in 3 priority areas. We work in economic and democratic governance. We work in green, resilient growth and transformation, and we work in human development. Under these headings, we have numerous projects, many implemented by local organizations, some implemented by government, some implemented by the UN.
Right. Let me take you back to the EU Day. What exactly happens on the day as the EU? How do you commemorate this special day?
So the EU Day is the 9th of May. This year we are celebrating it for logistical reasons on the 8th of May. And we do so by taking the opportunity to recall what is the founding values of Europe and how do they fit into Malawi. Because it's true that if our partnership has matured, has become more equal, more political, it is still a partnership which is based on cooperation, but our motives have changed. We are here to promote our values, our principles, our interests even. But fortunately enough, in the case of Malawi, there is a very good degree of coinciding values, principles and interests. So we work towards the same goals. And Vision 2063 in Malawi is one of them. So on Europe Day, we take the opportunity to celebrate the success of the Schuman Declaration, but also to remind ourselves of all the shared values that we have with Malawi and our common endeavors and how we are implementing our development aid together with government, together with partners, together with international organizations. And in very practical terms, we do that in an extended kind of a reception setting where there will be lots of speeches. There will also be an exposition of some of our projects and some of our activities, and then it's a great opportunity to meet partners, to discuss in a less formal setting, I'd say, that we normally do.
Right. And tell us about your campaign, which you are launching, Growing Malawi Together. What's this about?
So Growing Malawi Together is a new campaign indeed that we're launching, which is taking into account the constraints and opportunities that we're facing. You know, Malawi is facing numerous constraints because of exogenous shocks of various kinds. Since COVID, we've had numerous natural disasters, Cyclone Ida, Cyclone Anna, Cyclone Freddy. We've had polio, we've had cholera, and we've ended up in a situation where we don't only have a fiscal, a debt, a forex crisis, but also a looming food crisis. And we have a national budget which mainly is covering statutory costs, and there are very little margins for doing policies with the remaining 6% of the budget or whatever is left after the statutory costs. EU is facing a similar situation where we have no wars in the EU, but we have one at our doorstep, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. We have the numerous disasters all over the world, and we cannot mobilize the grants that we used to and be sure to obtain the successes. Furthermore, in Malawi, in spite of the significant amounts that have been transferred to the country over the past decades, much of the economic growth has been absorbed by demographic pressures, of course. So the idea with growing Malawi together is that we take into consideration our respective constraints and say, what can we do to turn this vicious spiral around? What can we do for Malawi to achieve its Vision 2063 within the limits of the means available? Right. For us, it's quite clear. We need to pick some of the low-hanging fruit to enhance creativity and innovativeness. We need to say, okay, how can we attract more foreign direct investments to this country? How can we attract some of the international finance institutions? And for the EU, it's quite obvious. We are gradually moving away from the classical grant financing into a more holistic approach, I would say. We call it Global Gateway, where we combine our grants with private sector investments, with international financing institutions, and we use our grants to leverage loans, to guarantee them. But for that to work, Malawi needs to do its part also. It needs to ensure that Malawi is not only a stable democracy, but also a stable macroeconomic environment which can attract investors, with a tax regime that is more competitive than that of neighboring countries, with a legal framework that is encouraging, so maybe to the land reform bill should take into consideration that we need land leases a bit longer to attract investors into mega farms. The crops bill need to be reconsidered. These things, in that prism of how to attract private investment. And these are things that we are in close dialogue with government of Malawi to make happen. Then, of course, there's the Malawian ATM strategy. We support the Malawi's ambitions, but for the ATM strategy to materialize, we need to look at. So agriculture, we have the commercialization of agriculture. For that to work, we need infrastructure, we need irrigation, electricity, roads that can give access to markets. That we're working on. For the tourism part, we need to look at there's a couple of low-hanging fruits. There's basically only one air company coming into Malawi as it stands. Maybe we need to consider how can we open up and have some more competition in that field. What about the visa regime? Are there ways and means that makes it complicated for tourists to come into Malawi as it stands? Is the prices at the luxury lodges that we have along the beautiful lake of Malawi, are they competitive in terms of prices compared to similar lodges in neighboring countries? These are things that need to be looked at. On the mining side, similarly, huge potential, but it will remain a huge potential only if we don't harness it. And to do that, we need to get the process started to have some of those mining development agreements signed and let in some of the operators.
Right. You talked about issues of the visa. We will shortly be going into a break. So briefly, there's been an outcry by most African countries on how the EU visas are so restrictive. How are you working with our government in terms of making sure that issues like those are also addressed?
So this is a very relevant point, and this is where there is still an imbalance in our partnership. Because let's be frank, EU does not need Malawian tourists to the same extent that Malawi needs EU tourists to come in. So reciprocity is not really fair to highlight in this context. It's true, EU is restrictive, EU is very concerned with immigration, and that's part of the motivation for the development aid also. They want to create a sustainable future for Malawians in Malawi, rather than attracting them Malawians to come to the EU. At the same time, we need also more hands in Europe, labor, but only in parts of Europe. And there we have the Union, which is first, and in the past decade at least, it has been mainly hands from Eastern Europe coming to Western Europe, which is, there's less of a cultural barrier, there's less of a language barrier, there are less costs involved. So this has been the preferred option so far by member states. This is problematic, however, which is completely beyond the EU, because we don't deal with visas, we don't deal with consular affairs, so we cannot do much in this respect. But you're not the first one to mention it. Meanwhile, I've seen now that Malawi have lifted visa payment restrictions on a huge number of countries. And it's only because I'm Danish and not in the list of those countries that it is something that is very close to my heart. And then, because I want tourism to succeed in Malawi. And for tourism to succeed, it should be simple to plan a trip to the country. And for the time being, it's not the case for every nationality.
Right. Ambassador Skinnebach will take a short break and just appreciate some of the works that the EU is doing. So in a moment, like they say, seeing is believing, let's just appreciate through this clip some of the works that the EU has embarked on in the country. Let's watch this together.
We are growing Malawi together. The EU in Malawi believes in meaningful partnerships that create an enabling environment for sustainable and inclusive economic growth, leaving no one behind. This partnership-based approach is leading to a brighter future for all of Malawi and its citizens. It starts with protecting the most vulnerable and empowering all communities. It builds on increasing access to education and skills development opportunities. It fosters entrepreneurship and incubation of new businesses. It invests in new infrastructure and it promotes an enabling and attractive business environment.
Construction of facilities like this can help to increase the productivity of food in our country. I believe in a few years, our country can change.
Well, I'm sure you now have a clear picture of what the EU is doing in the country and can appreciate the works so far. Well, in a moment, we'll be taking a short break and I will continue talking to the EU ambassador to Malawi, Rune Skinnebach, in a moment, in this edition of Date A, as we commemorate EU Day. Don't you go away. We'll be right back in a moment. Welcome back to this special edition of Date A as we commemorate EU Day. And one of their core values is to promote and protect democracy and universal rights in Europe and around the world. Since 1975, they have been a great partner to Malawi. And in today's special edition of Date A, I am talking to the EU ambassador to Malawi, Ambassador Rune Skinnebach. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Angel.
Before the break, we talked a little bit about public finance management, and we wanted you to dwell more on that. What is your role as the EU in as far as public finance management is concerned in this country?
So, our role is twofold, I would say. Once, we are very concerned about, in every country where that we partner with, about public finance management, because it's such a foundational thing for a country to work. Here it's linked to corruption, of course, which is still a concern in Malawi. It is also linked to effectiveness. We need the public finance management control systems, but also the systems in general to work in order for Malawi to run efficiently and to select the best procurement, the best offers that it gets when it does public procurement, etc. Finally, the EU is in the process of relaunching budget support to Malawi. You know, after Cascades, the EU, along with other development partners, withdraw and stopped budget support, which is badly needed in the Malawian context. And I'm very happy that we have succeeded to get this back on track. But that comes with a number of conditionalities, also linked to public finance management, of course. Because our money will go into the budget and be part of that. I am confident that Malawi is making significant progress on that front. We see the rollout of IFMIS, which is a system that helps increase accountability also in the public finance management, is happening. I see also there is a big awareness amongst the Malawian population. When I drive to Blantyre, I go through different corruption-free zones, they call them, big banners, and so there is, and in the newspaper we can read about it also, that corruption is not a taboo, and I guess that's the first step in the right direction to eradicate it. The government has made strong commitments to fight corruptions. We are yet to see very tangible progress, but I'm hopeful that it will happen gradually as awareness of Malawians increases, as acceptability of corruption decreases.
Right. And what do you think is the role of the citizenry as far as gaining independence is concerned? Because the EU is not there forever. What are you doing as the EU to empower the local Malawian, even as you work with the communities out there?
So we are not there forever, but we've been there for almost 50 years,
yeah,
and we will stay for a long time.
Right.
We are counting on partnering with Malawi for the future also. That being said, empowering the citizens is absolutely crucial, not only for us to be successful, but for Malawi to succeed with the Vision 2063, which is foreseeing a middle-income industrialized country in 39 years. That takes empowerment. For now, we work on different axes. I think empowerment, first of all, it comes through education. And we are supporting significantly through ISM2, we are supporting secondary education throughout the country. Access to schools, more schools, special focus on girls and who are underrepresented for cultural reasons, for reasons linked to early pregnancies and early marriages. So this is one way we are targeting it. Also, TVET centers we are supporting strongly because it's about gaining skills, of course, that can help building the middle-income country that we are all aiming for. Then we do, under the Sachito program, we focus a lot also on entrepreneurship to say, okay, that there's lots of talent out there. Remember that the youth is a huge proportion of the population, 60 to 70%, depending on where you set the
80% thereabouts.
Yeah. And we need to harness this potential. It's a bit like the mining. It's no good to have it if we don't use it.
Yeah.
And to do that, we try to push the entrepreneurships, and we try to facilitate it also by giving support to develop business plans and developing concepts, but also by giving access to finance, because that's one of the tough things. When you start out from scratch, it's difficult you don't have enough to guarantee a loan in the bank, and even if you do, you will not make enough money in the start to pay the interest rates. So access to finance we also help. So these are things that we are doing concretely to harness the potential of the youth. And then I should mention here also that we are very often bunch of grey old men sitting, conceiving these ideas, and this has been a handicap for us. So therefore we have established now a youth sounding board, which is 15 selected youth, both genders, different regions of the country, that we pull in our discussions on programming, that we pull in when we go on missions, when we go, when we have events, but more importantly, that we discuss with how does this concept work? Is that responding to the needs of the youth? Is there something we can do better? And if it's a good concept, how can we now reach out the best possible way? I realize that I'm a boomer, and Facebook may not be the most efficient tool to reach the youth today. So what else do we do? And there we pull on the youth sounding board to help us.
Right. And we keep talking about Agenda 2063, and I can see that already you are doing so much. And the issue of the youth is quite crucial for you as the EU. What are some of the milestones? Yes, you touched on some of the key areas, but as the EU, even as we commemorate EU Day, what are some of those milestones, even as we strive to achieve Malawi 2063, that you can actually celebrate and really be proud of so far?
I think it's too early to celebrate, I'm afraid of saying. I thought a milestone was last year when we succeeded in, well, Malawi succeeded in getting the extended credit facility for the IMF. This was absolutely crucial, not only for macroeconomic stability, but also for attracting budget support from the World Bank and from the EU, which will hopefully pave the way for others. And this is so badly needed. Now another milestone will be if we manage to keep it, because one thing is to obtain the extended credit facility, but it's a 3-year program, and to keep it, we need to meet a series of benchmarks. I think we leave it down on the same. For me, another milestone will be the upcoming elections. I think that we have, historically, we have referred to Malawi as a democratic beacon in the sub-region. We have praised Malawi for the way that the elections in 2019 and 20 were managed. We want to make sure that Malawi also stays on track in this respect, because we know scientifically to have successful economic growth, democracy is the most reliable model. So this is something that we will monitor closely also together with our Malawian partners, and it will certainly be another milestone. For me, I think that the big elephant in the room is demographic pressure that we discussed earlier on. There is a cultural change. It takes time. I think there's already progress, but thanks to other development partners, the child mortality has decreased enormously. The life expectancy has increased enormously. Now we need to adjust to those new patterns, and Malawians need to adjust to the means they have at hand also. And I think now the average is 5.7 children per family. That needs to be reduced. In Europe, we are below the 2.1, which is what is required to keep the population stable. But there's certainly room for reduction here. And how to take that debate, I'm not sure, but it is something that needs to come from within in Malawi.
Right. Now, we've talked about what the EU does and yourself, but of course, on a lighter note, you've been here 2.5 years now?
Yeah.
How do you find Malawi?
As I say, Malawi, the warm heart of Africa, it's a very easy place to land. It's not always quite as easy to get things done here. but that's part of the charm, and that's why we're here also. So Malawi has been very good to me, and we, my family, has truly enjoyed the stay so far.
Your favorite meal so far?
But I'm from Denmark. We like our fish, so also here in Malawi it's the champo, of course, that is my favorite meal.
Excellent. Your final remarks, Ambassador, as we conclude the program?
Maybe just a plea. We are 17 months away from elections. I observe, like many others, all the maneuvering that is taking place, even if campaigns are far from being officially launched. My plea is to all Malawians to remain calm, to exercise their democratic rights of voting, but also their duties of holding those in power accountable and use their common sense when they vote, and make sure that we get a peaceful elections within the framework of rules that are existing and guiding us.
Right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Rune Skinnebach, for your time, and happy EU Day. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Chima, for coming and for giving us this time and opportunity to discuss issues which are very important for the EU, but certainly also for Malawi.
We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much,
Thank
Ambassador.
you.
Thank you. Well, that's it for today in this special edition of Date A, where we were commemorating EU Day. And we were honored in this edition to have the EU Ambassador to Malawi, Rune Skinnebach, as our guest, highlighting the importance of EU Day as well as the role of the EU even in our very country. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the entire crew. My name is Angel Chima, thanking you for being there. Enjoy the rest of our programs, and happy EU Day once again. Goodbye.